Welcome to the True Demon Lord Show. I am the True Demon Lord Franco, and today we're going to be starting a mini series talking about how to build a competitive demon list. So we're going to try and make this quite granular. This first video is going to be the basics, so we're going to be going through everything you kind of come to when you come to building a list, all the basic things you need to think about. This will be more generalized, though we will obviously string it back to demons, mentioning certain units and stuff like that. But I'm just going to give you basically that groundwork that you want to build your list from. So all the things you need to think about, what you need to plan for the list, and then going forward we will do videos specifically built on how to build a corn list, how to build a Nurgle list, Slanesh list, Zinch list, how to build like all the different archetypes, how to do a list that can do scoring, etc, etc. We're gonna make this a bit of a long-standing video series. So if there's any specific type of list you want to see me build, which we'll probably do through TTS, so we'll sit there, we'll build it, we'll go through the whole process of building it, choosing the units, why I've chosen those units, and then maybe just choosing certain deployment zones to kind of build those lists or show you how to deploy those lists on, and just some maybe little tips and tricks for movement, stuff like that. It's going to be experimental, so any feedback, please. I would love to hear it. So it'll help me make these videos better for all of you. So let's get into it. Let's start going through everything from the bottom up. So first we've got planning. So when we say planning, this is all the things you need to think about when building your list. So we've obviously got missions. You have to think of what missions are you going to be playing. So when you're looking at a mission pack for an event you're going to, what exact missions are we going to be doing? What are we going to be playing? The terrain sets. So again, you can, if you're going to multiple events and they've all got the kind of same terrain sets, then you can kind of build to all of them. But if you're going to specific events, you want to look at what terrain set, how this terrain impacts the game and the units you take. We've got the current meta or game state, and by that we mean what's quite prevalent at the moment. So going into the start Pariah, Orcs still look quite good, Sisters are going to be a bit scary, we'll probably see Admech. Demons ourselves will probably be running around a lot more. World Eaters probably as well. So you need to look at it, what's quite good, what type of playlist or play style is doing well, is it shooty, is it combat, etc, etc. Then you've got your own player preference and list style. What type of game do you like to play? How do you play? Are you quite an aggressive player? Are you more defensive? Do you like being all over the board? Do you like kind of picking on part of the board and just hitting it, etc, etc? And then probably the most important part of all of it is scoring. So thinking about how can you score your points, what units are you going to take with what game plan to score all these different points. So we're going to go more granular into it, starting with the mission. So when you look at your mission pack, that's always one of the first things you should do when you're looking at going to an event. Look at the mission pack, and in that mission pack it will show you each round the deployment zone or the deployment map, the mission rule attached to it, along with the primary mission. So you want to look at the deployment maps, see which ones they're using, and then think, okay, so how can I get to certain objectives early on from where I'm at? Looking at the terrain that they've set up with that, we'll get to that in a minute. And just thinking, okay, well, combat army is quite prevalent at the moment. There's some deployment zones here that benefit them, like the new tipping point and the new sweep and engagement. You know, they've got like the Tetris style, and because of that, you can get closer to people. So you want to think about things like that. The mission rules, so take and hold, scorched earth, etc., scorched earth, sorry, etc., etc. How can you score them? Can you realistically be scoring average 10 points on primary or 8 points on primary, basically two objectives? Special things like scorched earth, have you got the units to be able to do it and protect yourself, not die, be able to keep the objective protected? Just thinking about all these things in the missions, how you can score the points. And then primary missions, so obviously in Prior we have a lot more that benefit the battle line, stuff like that. You've got raised banners, etc, etc. But we've also got, you've got your like hidden supplies and stuff. Now, I don't want to go too deep into all this with Prior, because we are going to do a specific video talking more specifically about the missions themselves. So this is just a general overview. Looking at the terrain, so again, something important that you should really be looking at. How is the terrain set? Is it quite sparse? Is it quite dense? You know, can you move around it? Can you keep hidden? Do you need Be'lakor? Is it open enough that, and you're expecting to see more shooty armies? Do you really need to keep yourself protected from turn 1, turn 2 shooting? You want to look at, can you stage combat units? And by stage combat units, that means, can you set your units up in a bit of terrain, hidden, not being able to be got to by the opponent, and then being able to move out in the next one and get a good charge? Good for fiends, good for flesh hounds, even blood crushers if you can get the right terrain to move around, and greater demons to an extent. Can you hide your greater demons? Because greater demons are definitely going to be a big part of your list. Is the terrain big enough, like wide enough for you to be able to, say, take a great unclean one or a bloodthirster and be able to hide them behind? Can your opponent move block you? So, of course, we've got certain units like the ground clean one, Shilaxi, that can't move through units, blood crushers, fiends. All these units you kind of want to be surging forward. So basically, is there enough gap that your opponent's going to have to struggle if they want to try and screen you, or are the gaps small enough that they take, like, say, 3 small cheap, or 5 a cheap, I don't know, a scout unit, or some crew or something that they can kind of just early block you. You can't move through those gaps, and essentially you're stuck. So you need to look at that as well when creating your list, taking certain units or having certain game plans. And then, are the objectives obscured enough? And what I mean by that is, are they out in the open? Generally, if you have 3, the middle one will probably be a bit open, but the ones on either side will be a bit obscured for each player. But then there are some terrain sets, I've played on them myself, where there's 3 objects in the middle and every single one of them are right in the open, and you're playing against a really horrible shooty list. So you want to look at that, because then again, that's where Be'lakor comes into it, maybe the Great Unclean One, etc, etc. So the meta, like we said earlier, the meta is what's currently quite good at the moment, what we've seen a lot of, what's quite prevalent, and just a few instances of it. So combat hordes, quite notoriously a bit of a nasty one for us to deal with. 8 bound will probably be a lot more common because they got cheaper and they're still pretty good. Orc hordes, like Orc boys, again got a little bit worse. Now they only have a 6-up invuln standard in the Green Tide, and then a 5-up when they're over 10, which is better for us. Bully boys, again, not like they now only have the 5 funnel pain instead of a 4+. They're still good. Sisters, the Repentia horde is going to be a bit of a problem. So can we take units to deal with them? Things that have like sweep attacks, or like blood crushers, go in, do the impact hits, then hit them afterwards. Loads of attacks. Demonettes to an extent could be okay with dev wounds. Anti-monster shooting, so have they got a lot of heavy strength 12 plus d6 plus something damage, anti-monster like anti-monster 4 plus or stuff like that, or anti-fly if you're taking things like bloodthirsters, Be'lakor. You want to look at, is there anything in the game at the moment that's quite scary? Again, Be'lakor is a good counter to that. But then you could also look at it from combat as well. If anyone has any like armies that have like high amount of lethal hits are a problem for our big guys, especially if they can make it crit on 5s instead of 6s and then give rerolls. That hurts, so you want to kind of look into that and maybe take either the right monsters or some protection for those monsters, or maybe in certain instances pull back from the monsters. Like I said, going to Prior, we want 3 to 4 monsters anyway, so keeping an eye on that. Tough bricks, monsters, or vehicles. So what we mean by a tough brick, is that Custodes, when they were like, you could take the big brick with a 4-up for no pain. Mega knobs to an extent, stuff like that. Monsters and vehicles as well, like when we had Catan running around, you have repulsors or knights. You want to be able to tech in and be able to deal with those things. So Shilaxi is pretty good at that. Bloodthirsters, Scarbrand, etc. Even Blood Crushers to an extent, especially with Renmaster buffs. And then Indirect, so obviously Indirect Fire did just get nerfed. Now they only hit on 4s. Indirect is still decent. And a lot of Indirect could definitely cause us problems. Probably going to see less of it, but that's not to say it won't cycle back into the meta in the future. And so you've always got to kind of keep an eye out for Indirect, and again, Be'lakor is a counter for that. Then we have our list archetypes, or type of list. So what we mean by that is, what kind of list do you want to run? What style? Making it your own list, all that kind of stuff. So obviously we have Monster Mash. By Monster Mash we mean several greater demons or greater demon level monsters. You could maybe even include soul grinders in that to an extent, maybe demon printers, but monster mash typically means Bellicor and greater demons. 3 to 4 monsters or more. I think 3 to 4 is the sweet spot. I think 4 is a nice number, especially if you've got loads of other units to benefit from the shadow bubbles they now have. MSU heavy, so by that MSU means minimum sized unit. So by that we mean units of 3 screamers, units of 3 flamers, a single beast, 3 fiends, 5 fleshhounds, etc, etc. So your idea of that list is you're just taking loads of these little MSU units, 3 units of screamers, 3 units of fleshhounds, 2 to 3 units of fiends, a couple individual beasts, even nurglings, and the idea is you're just trying to score your points, be able to be fast, always have units available to do actions or be in spots to do certain secondaries, etc, etc. Then obviously we have Khorne, which will be a melee damage heavy style list. Definitely going to be good going into Pariah. It only got buffed and it was already decent anyway. I will not be surprised to see a Khorne demon list or a list that is heavily focused on Khorne demons doing well at a super major, potentially podiuming it, or even winning GTs and RTTs. I think Bellacor's still decent. I think he can still fit in a list, but Bloodthirsters and Scarbrand now being able to drop with shadows and use the shadows for other units dropping nearby is really, really good. And being able to advance and charge with Warp Surge now always for 1 CP because always being in the shadows. Blood Crushers are still good because they didn't go up in points. Realm Masters are insane. Bloodletters have a place in those type of lists because you can buff them out the gills. Skull Cannons, pretty good. You can really cause a lot of battle shock, or force a lot of battle shocks now with a Khorne list through Skull Masters and Skull Cannons, and then obviously having Greater Demons nearby, giving up -1 to battle shock tests for the enemy unit, and if they fail, they take D3 mortals. Nurgle, which is like a resilient scoring style list, being everyone on the board, kind of grabbing your opponent and holding them in place. I really like this style list. You basically want 2 to 3 great and clean ones. One of them will be obviously with the Endless Gift because that guy is nuts. Rotigus, I think, is key to this style list as well because that half OC, half movement aura is really good. And +1 damage on a selected unit for all Nurgle units to target it. Again, just helps your damage. You want your plague drones to give you reroll wounds when they hit something with their shooting attack. Individual beasts are nice scorers. Nurgling's not as good, but still decent for positional secondaries like engage and behind and all that kind of stuff. And obviously Plague Bearers. I think Plague Bearers are by far our best battle line unit, so they're fantastic. I think 40 to 50 Plague Bearers in a Nurgle list is very good, especially when you're using your drops from your Great and Clean ones, so to drop them down, charge in with +1 to charge because of their instrument, just swamping the objectives. The idea is you're just trying to deny primary while scoring well, stopping your opponent since now fall back and shoot doesn't allow you to action, neither does advancing. Pistols and monsters and combat can't do it. So, the idea is you're just trying to grab them with your ground clean ones and your Plague Bearers while still having your, say, Beasts and Nurgle and stuff like that kind of dropping around and scoring the points. And then we have an OC heavy scoring denial list. Now, what I mean by this is basically packing in as much OC as you can. Plague Bearers, Pink Horrors, even Bloodletters and Demonettes to a lesser extent. Fiends and Blood Crushers, pretty good at it as well. And the idea is you're just constantly hitting those objectives. Fiends now being 105 for 3 and 210 for 6 is quite nice. They can go through walls. The idea is they surge forward, hit something on an objective, contest it with a good OC or take it. Rodigus also fits in this because of his half OC aura. And then the idea is you're just stopping your opponent from scoring as much as you can. Again, it's similar to Nurgle where you're grabbing it, but you're really benefiting from your OC. It's very similar to the Nurgle list, slightly less resilient and more focused on maybe a bit more combat. It's kind of like an in-between of Khorne and the Nurgle list, the ideas of them. And then we're going to look at scoring. So again, we are going to do more of a specialized video on this where we talk about all the stuff for Pariah Nexus, but that will come sometime in the near future. So this will just be the most basic, talking of it. You need to always be able to score your primary. You need to think, what can you do to hold your backfield? Plague Bearers are great for it. They sticky it, they can go up, and then you can screen it out with Nurglings, for example, or a beast or something. Being able to hold objectives in the middle, the Great and Clean one, the Endless Gift is great at that. Blade Bearers are decent at it. Pink Horrors are decent at it. Anything within 6 inches of Be'lakor can hold it because they can't be shot outside of 18. Scoring your secondaries, you need to make sure you can keep consistently scoring those secondaries, at least being able to score 3 turns of like both secondaries, and then ideally 1 secondary each on the other 2 turns to really keep that score consistent with your primary. Units like Screamers and Fleshhounds, fast, good bit of movement, being able to move forward and do those secondaries, dropping things like Beasts and Nurgle and Flamers into little gaps. Even using Greater Demons, like a Great Unclean One, because it's probably the best example, to drop in the opponent's backfield, 3 or more away with Denizens of the Warp, and then dropping around 6 of them should you need to get behind enemy lines or something like that. Yeah, so you just need to make sure you're taking enough basically action units, action monkeys, units that will do those actions, just enough units that you can keep using around and scoring. Basically planning to all the secondary, or a lot of the secondaries, keeping your options open for bring it down and assassinate and stuff like that. And then also you want to factor in your denial as well. And of course, if you're taking certain lists, that will be the idea, is denying points as well. But you want to be able to plan, how can I stop my opponent on primary? Have I got any units that I can kind of throw forward to do that in a couple turns? As well as trying to limit their secondaries. If you've got units that they have that they will be planning to throw forward, then the idea is you want to kind of grab those units, prevent them from getting into certain areas of the board, or even just killing them, etc., etc. So you always want to factor in units that you can use to prevent your opponent scoring, limit your opponent scoring, or just units that will be good at killing those type of scoring units. So that comes to close in the first part of this. As you can see, we kept it more basic, quite granular as well, going into the basic steps, while also involving some of our units, so relating it back to demons. But like I said, in the next upcoming videos of this series, we're going to be looking more into certain lists, how to build god specific lists to do scoring denial, the units, and like lists really taking into secondaries and stuff like that. But yeah, if there's any specific style list you want to see me build using TTS, talking through it and just giving some advice on how to best run it, how I would personally go about doing it, then please leave the suggestion down below, and I will look into it, start planning it. This will be a slow go series. It will be over time for the next few months, because like I said, I want to really sit down and plan these lists and hopefully get suggestions from all of you so I can implement that, because again, this is about showing and helping all of you, and the best way to do that is by helping and showing you what you want to see. So thank you for tuning in. Look forward to the next few videos of this series as we go into how to build that competitive list, mentioning Pariah, but I'm trying to keep it less Pariah centric, just so this is like something you can look back on maybe in future updates and even additions. But we will obviously circle back to Pariah because that's the state we're in at this current time. But yes, look forward to that. Look out for all the tier lists that I'll be doing amongst all of this stuff as well. I would assume I'll probably have at least 1 or 2 of them out. I don't want to say which ones because I'm not sure exactly which ones I have released yet. But look out for them, where we talk about certain types of units as well as the gods and the god specific units, and just ranking them in what I think they're going to be, how they currently are, and how they're going to be for the rest of Pariah. So thank you for tuning in, and I will catch you all in the next one.